Oh, yes, she was.
Oh.
Boy, that doesn't look 10 minutes late to me. Jolene?
I lied. Or she drove fast.
Your special escort?
Yeah. They'll be in after a minute, yeah. All right.
I lied.
Intros will do the special interest.
Could make a short streaming on
She drove
YouTube.
fast.
They'll be in after.
On the meeting?
If you're gonna speak, if you want to pull it down, fine, but we'll probably, you're not speaking.
Mission control here.
All right, we're gonna call this to order. Pledge of allegiance.
Which one do I flip?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did it without. Right?
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of our December 15th meeting?
I will make a motion. After that,
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the minutes of the meeting? Any corrections need to be done, additions, subtractions? Chime in anytime, Jolene. All right, seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes?
Except,
Thanks, Jolene.
All right, we have roll of accounts dated December 17th, 2020, in the amount of $294,000. December 30th, 2020, in the amount of $201,720.62. And December 30th again, in the amount of $73,315.45. And January 14th, 2021, in the amount of $120,552.37. Report of committees. Does the policy committee have anything to report out?
Did not meet, but we'll resurrect. We had a pretty clean slate. We're just going to get through the policies before you this evening.
All right. On to administrators' reports.
Hey, hello. I put a copy of it at your seats. Just some general school information. We have Tanya here with us, so yay. Today was her official start date as our special education director, RTA coordinator. It was a busy day.
Very busy day.
For sure. So we are very glad to have her on board and have her with us in the building every day. Her office is what used to be the conference room in the office, so it's right in line. It's her and then Greg and me, so we're very happy about that. So welcome officially. Our remote learning numbers have fluctuated a little bit. It was at 101. It still remains right around there. We still have conversations going on with families. Third quarter starts next week, and so we had asked to have decisions of whether people were going to be returning or not by last Friday. However, we're still having conversations with people today, last minute conversations, so I can send a more updated number to you tomorrow. So I literally have some messages in my inbox about, are we too late, can we come back, and whatnot. So we're trying to make those adjustments as we can. We have been meeting as an attendance committee pretty regularly. We actually bumped up our meetings to be twice a week to talk about remote attendance and in-school attendance. And we usually met as an attendance team, just to keep it in perspective. Last year, we met once a month to discuss attendance. We are now meeting twice a week, just because it's so different. And we are counting remote participation as attendance for the days that students are in school or the fully remote learners. So it's it's a whole other facet of attendance we have to look at and how that plays in and what are the barriers or the challenges. We've done some wellness checks on homes where we can't get a hold of anybody, or we haven't seen or heard from anyone, just to try to put eyes on people, because the big fear is if they're not coming into school, if they're fully remote, we don't ever get to see them and put eyes on them just to make sure they're okay. So it's definitely kept us busy, I would say. We've been able to put some really good protocols into place with the teachers and to try to get on top of the attendance as much as we can and just see, and it's been really good. So things have come from those conversations where we find out people need hotspots, and David's been super accommodating with those for families, or if it's tech support, and so we are able to have Teresa reach out to families. It's been really good, so I just wanted to kind of update you guys on that. The readathon just came to a conclusion, and I think that was pretty successful. The PTO did a lot of work there with Melora, our librarian, and Meg Swanson, our counselor. We're working on what the classroom winners are going to do. They're going to be able to have, vote to have, do something ridiculous, I guess. We're brainstorming ideas right now. And so I Googled it and I was like, okay, I can get duct taped to a wall. I can dress up in a funny costume. There's a principal out there that is known for spending the night on the roof of the building. It's amazing I don't know how I feel about that, but it's kind of fun to think about how we're gonna do that. And we were able to celebrate that last week with the kids, giving them a snack, having some special reading time in their classrooms. They could dress up as their favorite book character. So it was really nice to have something like that over vacation. We recently just did a math, kind of a diagnostic baseline assessment that's based on a math program we have. And Erica Millett, our math specialist, was able to proctor that with the teachers and with the teachers' assistants. It's been a little while since we've had a common math assessment to be able to start gathering some data on our kids. A lot of people have concerns about where kids are and what they're missing, and this is a great way for us to start to look at the skills they do have and what skills we might need to focus on moving forward. So it feels really good to have an assessment in place like that we can then give later on in the spring and measure progress. That's definitely been an area that we've been lacking in the past few years. We've always had the state assessment, but that didn't happen last year, and we're still not completely clear of what's going to happen this spring. So it's nice that we're starting to put those in place for ourselves and have those no matter what ends up happening. So there's the new walk-in freezer in the kitchen. I'm sure Al will speak to that as well. That was kind of a construction project over vacation, just to allow for them to have some more space since they're managing so much more food, because we're packing for food to go home for remote days. And then Meg Swanson and Tabby Sagner, our social worker, have been doing a great job offering wellness circles for staff. One of the big concerns right now, I actually attended a webinar today, is just social emotional support for staff, just with all the stressors everywhere, everybody's feeling it, but they've done a good job breaking it up to offer a place and some space for people to just kind of be together and find support in each other. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. That's kind of the general school information. As far as professional development, we have really been able to hit the ground running with our literacy specialist and math specialist. So I just want to say thank you again for the support, being able to get that math specialist position in place. The two of them together have really been able to, we met this morning to talk about our plan as far as identifying essential standards or revisiting them, because they were identified like in ELA, but they were done long ago. So we need to look at them again. But this is really going to help us figure out how we can measure what kids have, what they're lacking, and then be able to move forward with that, which feels really good. So yeah.
I've had a few people ask, are the results of those assessments, like the math one we just did, is that something that the parents are going to get some of that information, or is it more for internal use?
It's more for instructional purposes, but I don't see why we wouldn't be able to share that information with parents.
Just because it's so little testing.
Absolutely, and,
And that's okay, and that's where we're at, but
right,
if
No,
there
but I-
there is information that is reasonable, I've heard.
They're gathering all the information now and
Yeah.
baseline, so once Erica gets that, we'll be able to kind of figure out where our
It
students
might
are.
not make sense, but maybe once you get another point of reference or something like that, just keep in mind what people have said, so it's testing.
right, how are they doing? Well, because once it's gathered from all the different testing sites, they're then gonna norm the data so that we can have comparisons. So
Right.
I think once that's established, it'll be really interesting to see, like I said, what are our strengths? What are we doing well with? We found that there's been a lot of information that, we did a reading assessment, directed reading, a DRA earlier this year. And our literacy specialist has done some on kids this winter in the interim just to see progress being made. And it's really helpful to be able to have that. It's not the end all be all, but with all of the concerns right now regarding academics, it is nice to have this system so we can see it and we can measure it. And we've always done curriculum work in the past, but to have these two people in-house to carry out those conversations with teachers continually just allows for that momentum to continue. And it feels really good to have kind of a plan in place. And, this is what's going to help us be able to adapt for whatever gaps were created last spring and this year. So that is nice. The only other things we have coming up is the second quarter ends this week. We are officially halfway through the school year. Third quarter starts next week.
Anything for the administration? Any questions, concerns, comments?
Oh, I have one other thing. For the readathon, your librarian and Ms. Swanson, they were so incredibly helpful. These guys kind of have our hands tied, we can't really come to the building or give, so everything's a little harder. And we gave them the financial support and we gave them the guidelines and kind of what we thought would work and asked them anything we could possibly do. We did everything they asked us to, but they did a phenomenal job and really happy with that.
That's awesome. Thank you for saying
And I
that.
don't even know how many posts that, like, apparently I know a lot of the parents whose kids won, and that was the most positive thing I've seen tonight, and I'm like, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
So it was really good.
thanks for saying that, Jessica, because those two people work
Oh,
hard.
they are-
They go above and beyond.
They really do.
Yeah, thank you.
And everybody in this one, they really stepped up for this, because that was a big event, it was not very time.
Just a quick question, the letter references strategic plan being available to us for the February meeting. I don't know if that's a question for either of you. What's going to be,
I'm sorry, I can't.
what will be included in the strategic plan?
It's really, I covered the cost centers, we have 11 cost centers in our budget. I don't have it for you today, I paused on it, you're gonna have it eventually.
Financial document. It's a financial document.
Financial, but also really 3 to 5 year missions, really targets today. Yeah. You will have that in your February package, Zach.
All right, I'm going to deviate just a smidge here from the agenda and ask Mary Ann to give us a report or an update on what's going on in the school.
Well, what's going on in the school is we seem to be maintaining our safety of our hybrid. We have not had any new cases since we've been back from vacation, which is really good as we're watching the numbers climb into the 800s. I've got to do, a kudos out to parents. They've been really good about keeping their children home if they're sick. They reach out and let me know this is what we have for signs and symptoms of things that are going on. And also too, we have the ability to do the rapid screening here at school, which has been really helpful. I've done quite a few where parents, where the student is not here, they'll drive up on the outside of the side door. I'll go out and screen the student and then let the parent know in 15 minutes if their student's positive or negative. So that's been a really good tool for us to be able to have to maintain our school safety. And it gives parents a lot of confidence. Go ahead,
How
Jeff.
many of the screenings have you done?
I have done over 25 screenings. Yes, we've had positive. Yeah. Which has been really good because it helps us to, helps one with contact tracing, and it helps us to be able to stay in school, to be able to stay in our cohorts because we're able to catch anything easy and be able to maintain what we have. So that's been really positive. I think that's about it for what I've got for new things.
How many people are using the app that, 'cause I haven't seen anything about it since it came out the first.
We are in the process of updating our, Megan, Greg, and I think David, we had a meeting with the people from Rapid Screen to see if we could get more numbers using it. We have differing days because of the cohorts, but we maintain probably 80 or so people each day using it. So we have some
Does it make
emails
sense
that
to
we're
do
gonna go
another-
back and change.
Does it make sense to do another email or something about it? Because
Yes,
okay, 'cause I haven't seen anything about it except for the first time. I'm not on it, and I mean, I would be, but I couldn't find the information.
okay, so what happens with that, and that's where we've needed to update our emails, is we drew our email contacts from Infinite Campus, and some of those are not right. So now, I did the other day, I printed out the list, and then we're going to put the new emails in. People think that you can just download the Rapid app, but what you need is you need an invite, because then it gives you a number that you enter in, and then you can get into the program from there. So that's gonna be within, I'm gonna say by the middle of next week, we'll have that squared away, and then another email out to parents. Meg will she can do a robocall as well. It's really been helpful because staff or people will call me, or they'll send me a message that said, well, you know, I did have this, but it's the only symptom I had, so we talk about it and then we can assess what's going on. So, because not everything on there can be COVID, but it gives us a good unit of measurement to be able to keep people safe. Yeah, it's been good.
Any other questions? Any other questions for the nurse? All right, moving on. Public participation. Right now, we have one parent online.
Name is Melissa Olson.
Excuse me,
Melissa Olson.
Melissa Olson.
You're muted.
Need to turn your
You're
mic,
muted.
turn your mic on.
I don't have anything to say. I'm just here to hear about the sports.
All right. As of right now, we have nothing else. There are no emails, messages, so we're going to move on to the superintendent's report.
Happy New Year, 2021 is here. Hope you all had a good restful holiday. It seems like it was a long time ago, a little longer than it feels right now. December 30th, 2020, our solar energy farm is active and online generating power as part of our consortium that we joined with the town. So we will start to monitor our monthly electrical bills, and I'm anxious to see how that plays out over the ensuing months. So that's officially up and running and generating power for us, hopefully to stabilize our electrical rates. Number two, teacher negotiations. We're on standby. I've spoken to Mr. Trask, and he's just waiting to hear on his side from representation, and as soon as he gives the
Beginning of
green
February.
light, we will begin.
Beginning of February, just waiting for John to come off medical leave.
Okay. Budget, we basically decided to table the budget for this evening. I've been working on it, but we have a lot of unanswered questions. If you've read the paper and any information coming from the governor's office and the Maine Department of Education, they have been very vigorously working on the ED 279s and trying to take into account the pandemic, the impact on schools, and there's a lot of different factors that have really rolled into that. Enrollment is one thing we always talk about. Our October 1st enrollment, our April 1st enrollment, our overall enrollment, we are down as we sit here today. And again, I think it's pandemic impacts with some people out of fear just have pulled their kids out and are homeschooling them totally, among other reasons, and some families that just moved away. So the ED 279s are on the bubble, possibly by the end of this week. We don't know. But as soon as we get that, we'll have some, it'll help us give us more direction on the framing of the budget. Megan brought up testing. There is testing that's going to happen. There's been a lot of stuff going on in the Maine Department of Education. There is going to be a science test this spring for students in our state under a new, it's a new assessment called Meridian. So that is going to be in play, and the state is also, there's going to be a new ELA math assessment. It'll be done as a benchmark this spring. There's a lot of speculation. I haven't seen it officially in writing, but it looks like there could be a benchmark assessment this spring, just to piggyback everything else. I want to happily introduce, again, you heard Tanya Tebow is officially in her office with us now, here full-time in the building, and we're very excited to have her on board. Tanya brings a really breadth and depth of skill set with her to the table. Something I've asked her to be thinking about as far as a presentation in the next month or two is something that's called RTI, and those letters stand for Response to Intervention. And when you take that coupled with the PBIS that you've heard Megan talk about over the last 3 years, that the school has been involved with the University of Maine Orono, it really talks about having what's called a multi-tiered system of supports for students to have them do better in school and address different scaffolds put into place for students in our building. So I've asked Tanya with a team to make a presentation to all of you so you understand what that structure should be like in our school. It's not new, but there are a lot of schools around the state that are pretty vigorously involved in doing that work, and we are going to launch into that work. Our next meeting, I mentioned to Kevin, I apologize, it's February 9th, not February 16th. And that's all I have in my report. I'm going to save the rest of my words for other sections.
Anybody, comments, questions for the superintendent? All right, moving on. Paula, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
Director of Finance report.
Okay, just to piggyback on what Al said about the budget development, we are waiting to hear from the DOE on our allotment of state subsidy across the state of Maine. I do think that we probably would be able to present 1 or 2 cost centers maybe in February. So I think we'll be able to make that happen. At least that's what we're hoping. On the budget abstract, I think if you looked at it real quickly, you might say, whoa, 54.52% of the year gone by, and we've expended 53.21% of the budget. I wouldn't be real alarmed with that. We're spot on actually, because we have those encumbrances in there, which is all part of that ending result as expended. It acts like it's been expended, but we haven't actually, the money hasn't actually gone out the door. So if you take that away, we're definitely right on cue for where we should be at this time of year. So I don't have any concerns about budgets in Vassaboro at this point in time. On CRF funds, I'm happy to say that we have requested for Vassaboro all the monies for CRF 1 and 2. A lot of people across the state of Maine were having, hard times getting their money in. We had a lot of stuff we had to send to the state, and it was happening everybody at the same time. I have requested for Vassaboro, for CRF 1 and 2, all the monies that we've spent through December 30th. And we have actually received monies from the state through November 30th. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think we're doing a lot better than some of other districts that haven't gotten their money yet. So we're right up to date, except for the last request that I just sent in. So I think that's good news too. I don't know if Mary wants to talk about anything with the CRF funds, of where we're going next with new funds. I'll turn it over to you, Mary, if you wanted to say anything.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Mary.
As Paula said, the CRF funds, you know, we've had a couple of different layers of funding. The first sets of funds, the CRF funds, were supposed to be expended by December 30th. And on December 30th, we were notified that there was an extension of those funds. We would have appreciated knowing a little bit earlier, but that's okay. We'll look a gift horse, I think. And so now we have about, I would say about $90,000 in Vassalboro of unspent CRF funds. There have been plans for the majority of those funds, but due to some of the limitations in the timeline, we were unable to spend them. So now we have until the end of June to spend those out. So we'll be meeting Al and Megan and Greg, and I will meet to come up with a plan, and then we'll rely on Paula to help us facilitate that plan. We also have another round of funding. We refer to it as CARES funding. We'd already applied for some of that. That was about $125,000 that we had applied for, with a plan that was heavily for some of the additional support staff that we have this year in the form of what we refer to as super sub. But now there's a second layer of that funding as well, which is likely to be about 4 times what we received in that first bucket. And the good news on both of these CARES amounts is that the time crunch is not so serious as it was in the CRF funds. So we will have until September 2022 to spend out the first batch of CARES money, and then another year beyond that, so fall of 2023, to spend out that second round of money. And I think
Thank
that's
the good Lord.
Yes, just from a logistical standpoint, it will be helpful. But I think what that one is, you know, the first batch of CRF money was helpful because it really positioned us to be able to provide the cleaning equipment and supplies, additional PPE, materials for teachers, laptops for kids, all of the things that really were allowed the school to get up and running. I think that there, you know, now that that big hole has been filled with those funds, I think one of the things that we'll be looking at, I know Al has some ideas for it. I think one thing will be, how do we provide some supports for students that have, in terms of meeting needs that have been created by this unusual circumstance that we're in? And how do we provide those supports in a way that doesn't impact the local budget? So if you look over the next year or two, as we try to bring ourselves back to normal, and if we do find that we have expenses related to that, that those are things that we'll be able to have these funds for, and then we'll be able to phase out, because you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you're using those for things, and then when the money goes away, you don't have a way to pay for those things going forward. So those are the discussions in terms of the finances going forward. So, you know, there's strings attached to everything. And I think the strings attached to this money were that, you know, it put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. But on the other hand, as I said, it really allowed us to put ourselves and our students in a much safer and more ready for this scenario than they would have been otherwise. I'm happy to answer any questions.
pretty quiet here, Mary.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome, thank you.
There'll be more to come as we get to the budget.
Right.
Paula, you got anything else?
That wraps it up for me unless anyone has any questions.
Everything's rosy. All right. Moving on. Unfinished business. First one, winter sports review. Right.
So we've kind of been watching what other schools and districts have been doing up to this point, watching our numbers. The numbers are still high. I think with talking with Mary Ann, with Megan, I think that we're ready to offer something in February and into March. As far as basically set up like we did in the spring, cohorts with skills and drills. It would be an after school for an hour, it would be later, so students would end up having to find their own rides, but I think that we could manage to pull that off for a couple of months. And really anticipating that, jumping ahead a little bit, really anticipating that by the time we have spring sports roll around, we might be able to offer competitions among other programs. And that's kind of my end goal with an outside sport. The other thing that I've talked to is our cheering coach and seeing what she thought about having some students and participate in cheering. There are quite a few regulations that the NPA have put out for guidelines for cheering, but I think we probably could pull those off for February, March, depending again what the trends are with numbers. I think that's going to play a huge part.
Yeah, I think we're bound by the numbers and what they're doing, and right now they're not doing really well, unless you like high numbers, which isn't a good thing.
And what grades are you doing the skills and drills with? I know it's kind of tough.
What grades? I spoke to one of our basketball coaches in cheering, and they're willing to offer a 5.8. And if the numbers are still low enough, I've talked to Marianne about what we would look for in the gym. In a cohort, we're probably not looking for more than 20 students to be in the gym at the same time, but if our cohorts allow, we would consider going into the 4th grade.
You said after school we were talking for February.
Anybody else? Jolene, you got anything?
So we listed that as information /action. Do you wish to take action or?
Well, if we're going to do this in February, I'd like to get started before our February meeting, so I think we should take action on it tonight. Do I have a motion to accept the recommendation from the assistant principal that we start a skills and drills program 1st of February, depending on, of course, the COVID situation and the numbers. And,
I'll let you motion to accept the plan.
Second. Any further discussion on it? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting it? Jolene, got a hand up?
Yes.
All right. All right, moving on. School calendar, 2021 review.
So I believe in your packets, you were given February, and then I put one together for March. It just kind of continues on the path that we've been all year. Give her the day cohorts, the early releases on Wednesdays, which, I've advocated for those right along, and I want to add another layer to those moving forward. That's when we're hoping to do some of the professional development work with teachers as far as the essential standards for ELA and math and those common assessments as well. So that's kind of my, in addition to everything that, we've already talked about before during that afternoon time, moving forward, so. February, I think we voted on last month, but March, I think this is the first that you all have seen that, I believe.
Even if we did, we'll do it again.
Okay.
So do I have a motion to accept the school calendar for February and March of 2021 as presented?
I can make a motion. Jolene?
Do I have a second?
Woody was second.
Any further discussion on it? And I will remind everyone that these calendars are subject to change at any given moment. So if all of a sudden we get the green light from powers that be, we're back.
Absolutely.
So we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor of March and February, March?
Yes.
All right. We have some second readings of policies. As per usual, I will take these in a block unless someone has an objection to one of the policies, because we've already done first readings on them. They should have been all, if there were any problems, they should have been fixed, and so if there isn't any objections to any of the policies, I will take a motion to accept them all 5 of them as a block.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a
Jolene,
second?
second.
Second. Any discussion on any of them individually?
Policy committee's on fire.
On 5. All right, seeing no discussion on them, all in favor of accepting all 5 policies?
Yes.
Are there other policies that haven't been reviewed yet?
Oh, stay
Oh,
tuned.
yeah.
Yeah. We have a whole bunch more coming, but we thought we'd be gentle in the new year.
All right, moving on to new business. Information update on parent student survey and staff survey, next steps.
So, the survey says,
You couldn't help yourself.
pardon me?
You couldn't help
I
yourself.
could not help myself on that one. I'm proud of the responses that we got back. It was huge. Megan and Greg and folks, we debated. I thought it was too many questions, but we put the questions out there. We had, and I'm going to let Megan dig into the takeaways of this and next steps, but 60% of parents, communities responded from the overall results. And that's pretty huge, 234 individuals. Surveys often don't read those types of responses. So we're proud and pleased that people responded to give us more input. And also Megan asked staff, and again, staff continues to be dedicated, hardworking, and again, I can't say this enough, we've said it in past meetings. We're closing in on a year, readjusted. It has not been easy. And when I say that, I mean for everyone. I mean that for parents, I mean that for community people, students, and our staff. So I think the results of this point to some directions of things for us to highly anticipate to move forward. And I'll leave it there. But again, as we all know, we see the news, we read the news every day. When I see 2 million deaths worldwide a year, that's pretty sobering. We're on the cusp of, I think we crossed the threshold of 400,000 deaths in our country today.
Yep, we did.
Last week, we all know, in our state of Maine, and I think back to a year ago, I don't think at this point in time we had any in the state of Maine. They were on the West Coast. And we were all wondering, what does this mean? As I reflected even over this past weekend, when we first started having numbers here in Maine, 5, 8, 6, people got unnerved. Last week, we had 3 times we crossed the threshold of 800. You've had friends, I've had friends, I know of people that have been impacted by it in different ways, and it just truly has impacted all of our lives. I said this last week to several colleagues up in different parts of the state of Maine from my other job. I yearn for the day that a parent calls me and says, my child doesn't have enough homework. I look forward to the good old days of having those types of conversations about instruction. So anyways, survey response was huge. It was really good to put out, and I'll let Megan carry forward from there. But I'm glad we did the survey, and it's given some specifics that we're going to move towards.
Okay, so you were given a like the actual questions of what we asked of the community and then what we asked of the staff, but what I put at your seats tonight is kind of the results of all of that. So I just want to go through and highlight a few things that were, I don't know, pretty evident. I mean, the first question had to do with people's satisfaction for student safety in schools, and I was so pleased to see the result of this, because 73.3% of the community strongly agree that kids are safe when they're here. And that, I'm sorry, but that trumps everything right now. We need to be able to be safe. We cannot learn unless we're safe. And staff was 71%. So that was really, that felt good. You know, all the time that we put into all these protocols and everything we're doing, people can feel that, so that's nice. The next question has to do with communication, home to school, and that one is about half of the population of both. You know, the staff and the community were pretty similar in this response of that they strongly agree that communications are what they should be. And I can speak to our interpretations and what we're going to do with that after. If we look at in-person learning, it's going well for our students. 74% or 73.9% of the community feel it is. The teachers are a little bit lower on that. They feel it's 58%, and I think that might have to do with the fact that teachers have a view of what learning looks like and what it's always looked like for years, and it's very different this year. And so we feel that, yes, there are things that are going well. However, we do miss how learning was before all of this. And I think teachers are having a hard time letting go of that and looking at the world we're in right now. It's kind of like you taste really good chocolate and you know how good it is, and then you're given other chocolate and you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's chocolate, but it's not. We're still grieving the loss of what school looks like, I think. But that's my interpretation of that. It is pretty clear that we are not happy with how remote learning is going, and that is for the community and for the staff as well. It was interesting to see how aligned the staff and the community are with these responses. We did not create this school in mind to do remote learning. That was not what we're trained. You know, teachers go to school for 4 years to learn how to be effective educators, and we have had to learn how to teach remotely in a couple of months. And that's intense for anybody to go through. And there has been a learning curve, and we know that. We've been implementing this now for just about 4 months, long enough to kind of get a handle on what it is we're doing, so that we can now look at it and say, okay, we know what we don't know now. We were still learning the system, learning how it was going to go, and we're finally in a place where I think we can start to improve and look at what's working and what's not. But remote learning is something we need to work on, and everybody agrees on that. When we look at the technology usage, 43% of the community agree that it has been productive and successful, and just under 48% of the staff agree too. I hear a lot of I have had personal conversations with almost every family this year, and it's a lot of adaptations for the technology. People aren't always the most comfortable with it, or we have to learn a whole new system of things. And as it's been going and as we've gotten more versed in it, it is starting to feel more comfortable. But it was very different. We've never been one-to-one all of the way through before. It's always been 7th and 8th grade primarily. I think last year we were one-to-one in 6th grade as well, but it's a learning curve. When you take a look at the pie charts, we are definitely different on this. Just over half of the school community feel that the safest option is for students to be in person every day, which leaves just under half feel that we should continue how we're currently operating with a hybrid schedule or be fully remote, which it's almost split down the middle there. And it's interesting. When you look at the staff results, we have 86.8% of staff that feel that the safest option is continuing with what we're doing, and 7.4% feel that we should be fully remote. And we have 4 staff members that responded that coming back every person every day is the safest. Again, I tried not to ask what people wanted. I tried to ask what they felt was the safest, because I think those are 2 very different things. I don't think you'll find a teacher out there, and any of us sitting here at the table, that feel, do we want kids in school every day? Yes, of course we do. But is that our safest option right now? It isn't. It isn't. And so I tried to word that to allow for that. That way, I'm a parent. Do I want my child here every day learning? And yeah, is learning at home hard? 100%, absolutely. But the thought of having him come in every day with the numbers are what they are right now, and it makes me a little uneasy. So the last page, I just included for you all the number of grade level responses we had. Not everybody identified a grade level when they answered the question. We had about 2% of people not put a grade level. But overall, I feel the grade levels were pretty well represented. Middle school had a little bit of lower numbers than some of the other grade levels, which, that falls kind of in with our parent-teacher conference participation numbers. It's kind of similar there. But overall, I feel like we had a good, healthy response to this. I don't feel that any particular grade level was way overrepresented and some were underrepresented. It was very, very interesting to read through everything. So some of the patterns and trends that we were able to pull from this is that the in-person learning overall, we're okay with. We do need to improve remote learning. Everybody wants students in every day, but almost half of the community feel it's not the safest choice at this time, and 94.2% of the staff do not feel it's the safest choice at this time. The other thing is, I think communication is occurring, but I think we need to step back a little bit and look at effective communication as opposed to just, sending out a flurry of emails or whatnot, but just how can we communicate a little bit more effectively, and whether that's admin to home or classroom to home and vice versa. I think we need to tease that out a little bit more. Mary Ann reached out to our epidemiologist that we've been working with from the CDC to see what their recommendations were. And I don't know if you want to speak to that really quickly, Mary Ann, about what they said to you.
Sure. There's been the 3 feet, 6 feet argument. We're 6 feet, and they know that we're 6 feet. And the first thing she said to me was, why would you want to change what you're doing now with all the numbers the way that they are? Part of it is the reason why schools are so safe inside is because we're able to control that environment inside. We can do that distancing. We can have kids eating safely, drinking safely, and distance while they're in school. We're very vigilant in our contact tracing. Our parents have been phenomenal in being upfront with us when their kids are not feeling well to be in school. The other thing is, she said that it's definitely not a time to make a change until we see where our numbers are going. She also suggested that I contact Emily Poland, who is our Department of Education nurse consultant. Emily's first thing to me when I talked to her about it was, why would you want to change that now? What you're doing is working. Your school is safe. And the same thing, that we can control the environment that we are in. If we have kids that are not feeling well, and we're going to see our numbers drop, and it's going to be really hard to educate our kids. So those are the feelings that I got when I reached out to our epidemiologist. And this is someone that we work with all the time. And both of them had nothing but praise for our school and our hybrid model and how we're running our school safely for our students so that they can get the most quality education given the times that we have. So.
And I know we get faced with, or at least I personally do, what other schools are doing, and other schools are doing the 3 feet, and why can't you guys do that? And I can't really speak to that authentically. What I can speak to is what we're doing here. And in our classrooms, the desks are 6 feet apart. And what that allows for is for students to be able to get up and move around their classrooms if they need to. And if people still think that kids sit at their desk quietly all day and don't say anything and don't move, you haven't been in a classroom in a little while. That's not how it works. It's neat to get up and move. Kids are able to have drinks at their seats and be comfortable and not have to go somewhere else for an alternative location to take a drink. Same thing with snacks. They can have lunches in their classroom. It allows for a comfortable environment. If we were to try to enforce that 3 feet, we then are talking about kids that have to have silent times of the day because they can't talk. They have to find an alternative location for a mask break, for a drink break, for any type of food and eating. And logistically, with some of the numbers being what they are in some of our classes, we can't fit it. And so when I was talking with a parent last week, I was explaining that, like, what 3 feet could look like in our classrooms. It's not conducive to learning. We would have to be so much more vigilant on all of our processes, all of our protocols with the kids that's going to get in the way of our learning. But if we can create an environment where kids feel comfortable, they have space, they feel safe in that space, the teachers feel safe in that space, that's going to be conducive to learning. If we compromise that, we worry about, sure, they're physically here in the building every day, but what are they actually getting? What I would rather do is continue on the path we're on, but focus our energy into improving. We know remote learning is not ideal right now. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys it is. We had to learn it. We had to figure out what it entailed, and we're at a place now where we can step back from that and say, okay, we know this needs to improve. We made a minor pivot earlier this fall with some of the grade levels restructuring and having a fully remote teacher. I have heard nothing but positive feedback about that at those grade levels. So now the grade levels that we didn't do that with, what are some restructuring and what are some conversations we can have with those teachers to help it with the synchronous learning piece? I love the idea, and I think we're finally in a place where we can talk about it for kids on their remote days, or if they're fully remote, to have an adult that they can check in with and they can be face-to-face with on those remote days. That's going to help the student engagement, 100%. We're at a place where we can do that now. Before, we were too busy trying to learn the system and what it looked like to be able to troubleshoot. We couldn't do it yet, but we can now. We're in a place where we can do that. We can look at trying to, like I said, ramp up the synchronous learning, improve the remote support. You know, we were just able to get a after-school support system underway, where we're calling it Family Academic Support Time, FAST, in the evenings, where there's an hour every night of the week for a grade level to check in and have a teacher right there that they can ask questions to. We have it with our technology instructional specialist, where she's logging on, and that support is there. Allow us to do things like that. We can start to look at as numbers go down, as vaccinations get rolled out, as windows can be opened and we can be outside more, then we can start talking about, okay, are there pockets of the day where we could offer like signups for the community to help kids get here on their remote days to offer additional support? I would love to start brainstorming that, especially as the weather gets warmer and, you know, all those things that I just mentioned start to happen. And we can do that. If we have to pivot to start looking at bringing students back every day, that's gonna be a complete 180 from where we are right now. Every single protocol and process that we are currently operating with, we have to revamp and revisit because we can't do it with every kid. That's gonna be a lot of energy and a lot of time focused into reconfiguring. I mean, I have it listed out. It's a good chunk of things that we need to reconfigure because they will not work the way that we're doing them right now. Instead, we can take all of that, the energy that would take, and it's not that we're afraid of that, but I'd rather use that energy in different ways right now. I'd rather strengthen and boost what we're doing. I'd rather look at what can we put in place as certain logistics start to go down, and we can do it in a safer, much more intentional way. So that's kind of my thought. You know, Greg and I have talked about, there are certain things that we would love to start implementing and rolling out as it gets safer, especially hoping for what could be a normal year next year. I don't know. We don't know what next year's gonna look like, but you know, there are some procedures that we would love to put back into place with, starting with direct services. You know, can speech start seeing their kids face to face instead of through the computer? Can OT start providing services in person instead of through the computer? Can we start to look at our unified arts teachers who are currently going from classroom to classroom? Can they start having classes in their environments? Can middle schools start changing classes again? You know, like starting to get those processes back to normal, I guess, in a much more intentional, safe way with half of the population at a time to roll that back out. Eating lunch in the cafeteria again. You know, these are all things that we would like to get back to. We want normal more than anybody, but we have to do it safely and we have to do it intentionally. So that's my spiel. Did I forget anything? Thank you for listening.
Anybody got anything they want to add, or?
I think, if I could just, I'll chime in quick. I think there's been a lot of eye-opening as a result of results. Said it earlier, there's been no playbook, there's been no rule book. Staff wants to do better, we want kids here. And then I've even broached the conversation of extended learning opportunities. Statewide, this is a conversation happening everywhere. I'm up in Washington County, which you know quite a bit. And do we need to, and I think we do, is offering extended learning opportunities for kids because of the past 10 to 12 months. What does that mean? Does that mean that we have staff when it's safe to be in person, to be here during the summer months? Does it mean re-engaging students earlier, August of next year? But I think we need to throw every single idea we can. And again, if things change, as Kevin said, you talked about the calendar briefly, but if things change, Mary Ann talks to the epidemiologist, I spoke with the epidemiologist, and with Poland, and colleagues, but as soon as we can make significant shifts, we will do that. So, food for thought. I guess there's a lot of information there.
No, I just want to echo what Megan was saying about the job of this school is to educate kids. Bottom line. That's why the only reason that we're here is to educate kids. We have to keep those kids safe and healthy in order to educate them. Because nobody's going to learn if they don't feel safe or if they don't feel well. So I think we need to do what the science community tells us that we need to do in order to keep people, staff included, safe and healthy. And this means continuing on the path that we're on, so we're
Every month, we'll be back here talking about it again. I mean, it's not gonna change, it's what we've been doing.
All right. One piece of new business, COVID update letter, 12/14.
That was just in your package, I guess. I don't know why it was like that. If it wasn't, I'll try and email it. Was it in your package? So that was just a letter that got, it just came out after our last package. We should have had it in December.
Other business. Just to throw some ideas out, you heard Mary talk about CARES Act, and we're gonna get another bucket of money.
I don't want to talk about it. Go ahead, Kevin, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
I'm not gonna throw out any specifics, just have everyone put their thinking caps on, because this bucket of money, Paula mentioned there are strings attached, or maybe Mary, there are strings attached. Yes, there are, but they're kite strings. They're not very thick to put up, and I'm told to believe. So if you can, in some way, qualify an expense, either it's going to increase COVID information, it's going to increase social distancing, it'll get through. But it has in other communities. If you notice in Winslow, in front of the elementary school, there's a new steel post with some wires hanging off it. They're getting a new sign with a message board on it.
Great.
CARES Act money. They got two of them, one for there, one for the high school. And as long as you use the message board to distribute COVID information, the COVID expense. I shared with Al, I won't give you any details, but I have shared with Al that there is some reconfiguring that we could do in this building, quite substantial reconfiguring, that we could say we need it for social distancing. Look at food. We won't know until we try it, but, so everybody just puts their thinking caps on and comes up with ways that, one, we could improve the school without having to use local monies. And we could use the CARES Act, because, again, this is money, you use it or lose it. But we do have an extended amount of time to use it. I'd just like to see us benefit from it. Anybody else got any other business they just want to toss around?
Maybe I should renegotiate.
Well, when does this, is there a group that meets about the money and what we're doing with it?
Well, this is, I'm going to pause, just.
Because if it's next year, that it's available, like the new money.
So the first thing we got in July was CARES Act monies. CARES Act monies landed in with us around $125,000, a little less than that. And the timeline on that was September of 21 this year.
Yeah.
Then we got CRF1 because Congress was printing money.
Yep.
Fast and furiously in different pieces. So the first bucket of CRF money that we got was around $353,000. Mary did the printout with you on that, and what it was detailed for. That's what she said tonight, that had to be shut down by December 30th. Same with CRF2 that came in at 373 for us. So you bundle that all together, it's 850,000 roughly, plus or minus. what's now happening as a result of Congress passing their latest piece in the 11th hour in December is, as Mary alluded to, all of a sudden timelines were lifted. So we have some leftover CRF 1 and 2 monies that we will utilize. And to piggyback on what Kevin said, and I'm just going to say this, I get nervous every budget season. And I get nervous for a lot of different reasons. I just don't know all the numbers yet, and Kevin knows that. And you all know that too. We have a lot of unknowns. So I think anything we can do to mitigate impact for taxpayers is number one, always on my list. But number two is, what can we do thoughtfully within the guideline of this money to better the staff, the building, or support the building? One of the things that we shared with you is that Mary Ann's office we opened up that significantly for health reasons. We purchased new buses. You're not going to see any buses in the budget this year. And maybe next year too, but that was done deliberately for that. We've also purchased quite a substantial pieces of technology infrastructure on many, many fronts for the staff to help them be better and get better and continue to get better. So I think maybe in February, we'll know more. I'll know more about the ED2 something, and we can brainstorm again. I think if you have ideas.
I realized the last set of money came in quickly and these answers quickly and.
And it really,
heard about what it was.
and it really wasn't fair. Everybody I talked to, it was the federal government giving you 3 months to spend this incredible amount of money without really being thoughtful. So now we think, Kevin just said it, with this new next ESSER amount of money, it's 2 years. It's got a 2-year window to be expended. So I just.
Like our heating and air handling system?
Pardon me?
Like our heating and air handling system?
We're in pretty good shape. But
That's
we're
what
going
they
to
do.
Those are,
We're going to review.
those have been replaced
We
in
can
the
do
last
that, okay.
10 years.
Mary, did you raise your hand?
I did. I wanted just to make a couple points on some of those items. One is, I think Jessica's question about what is the process is a good one, because I think if folks have suggestions or ideas or thoughts, then just putting those out on the table in the next several weeks, it doesn't necessarily have to be at a board meeting, but that would be useful so that then we see what the range of possibilities might be beyond even, what we internally might be thinking. I think Kevin's point about some of these one-time expenditures is also helpful, because we don't want to get into a situation, as I said earlier, where we use something and start a new program or start an initiative with this money, and then 2 years from now are looking for, the local budget to pay for that. So I think some of these one-time expenses would be useful. The other thing that I'll say too, though, is that we're probably going to have, maybe within the next month, have to put in the application for it, but we will have the opportunity to revise the application if our thinking about it changes over time. So that at least is nice, because we can put in what we think right at the moment, and if circumstances change or if something else happens, we can adjust that as time goes on.
So I think you heard what Mary said. Throw your ideas.
Especially if they're, like she said, one-time expenses. And
Correct.
Supporting your.
Correct.
All right.
I mean, one thing we just finished, before you leave, you want to see it, we've added a whole new walk-in freezer in the kitchen for food service and delivery capacity. It was a big project, but something that would have never been able to happen without the monies we just received.
Anybody, like I asked, anybody else got anything else? Doesn't have to be about money, it can be about anything that you just want to toss around tonight. I mean, we can't vote on anything, but.
I would ask about a curriculum update to see kind of where the kids are in relative to where they not kind would be. Is there any data that's been collected on that?
That's what I think the math assessment will give us that data.
Okay.
As far as other subjects, I guess I'm not clear, what is it you're looking for?
Oh, if the curriculum for this year was supposed to be here and we're in wherever we are halfway through the year, this grade is supposed to be here, are they here? And how far are and how we're gonna catch up? All of those things, I think is something that is super important and
Absolutely.
obviously, that's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
I just wanna make sure that works on.
So,
Go ahead, Mary.
well, I was going to say, so to me that in curriculum world that you're talking about pacing, are we on pace?
Yeah.
And I would say, I probably can't speak to that quite as specifically in a general sense, but I'll say a couple of things is while the students are not here in person as often as they otherwise would be, I think one of the things that teachers may say is some of that gap is a little bit counteracted by the much smaller class sizes when they're here. So that's just, it's like a positive and a negative factor. The other thing is that you heard Megan mentioning earlier tonight about what we consider to be priority standards. So we've been talking with teachers about, within the curriculum addresses all of the standards. And while that's something that in a normal year, we really try to focus on, we had already, because of all that proficiency-based diploma work that was a couple of years ago, for those of you who've been on the board for a while, we had identified what we considered the most important standards. And so teachers had that in their back pocket, especially for language arts and math, to a certain extent. And so I think that's been something where they've been able to at least prioritize, even if they haven't been able to get to all of the things that they would have otherwise. It's not just a function of, well, what would I have covered at this point, but what are the most important things that I have to cover in a year, and that let's make sure that we've got those. So
We've also had the conversations of what students didn't get last spring, right? And that was brought to the next grade level, right? And so we're going to continue to have those conversations here. This is something that it's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to be a couple of years before we can really get back to where they should be, so to speak. And I think, one of the things that Greg has started looking into, and we're going to look into, is a grant that allows for additional support for students after the school year, whether it be in June and then in August, to help with some of those gaps, especially with the students that learning might be a little bit harder for them. And so we want to make sure they get a little extra support. We've also been talking about configurations for next year and what the grade levels might look like. We've started tossing around all ideas from, should we look at multi-age classrooms? Should we look at looping? Should we look at reconfiguring a number of different things, and not really deciding on one yet, but just kind of opening up the conversation for how are we going to be able to meet these needs that look different than they ever have before?
And that's also something that COVID, the CARES money should be able to support as well. I mean, I think that's what I was saying is you've got probably a 2-year transition back to something that approaches a normal educational setting. And so I don't mean in terms of it's going to be 2 years where kids are still out in this. I don't mean that at all. I just mean the ramping them back up and sort of getting them sort of resetting, I think is going to take some time. And so as Megan said, so there could be funding through some of this CARES, whether that is summer school or more robust tutoring, or I think, everything is on the table. Are there some students who would be better off staying in the grade that they're in now if they have not really particularly participated? And is that an option to give them a gift of another year where they're at? I mean, I think you're looking at any possible, and I think over the course of the spring, we'll start to sort out, what that system of supports for kids would look like.
Another question I had about IEPs. Are those kids able to all be in school now? I know a lot of schools are at least having the kids who are IEP and have those to be in school 5 days a week, whether they're in their own grouping or like their own cohort, and maybe mixed together. That's something we looked at.
Yep, we've started those conversations as well. It's tricky because we've started to look at what we would consider maybe at-risk students.
Right.
And it could be because they're identified, or it could be just they don't participate on the remote days. We lose them completely when they're not here. It could be students that just need additional support for whatever that might look like.
Yep.
And we've brainstormed, trying to formulate some criteria where if we do feel we have the space in certain grade levels, in certain classrooms, could we talk about bringing some students back every day? That's a tricky conversation. It's really hard to define that criteria and have that conversation with, I battle it personally because every kid should be here every day. And yes, there are extenuating circumstances for some and others, and I understand that. It's hard to prioritize that, but we've been talking with the teachers. We have, I've talked with some parents, and it is something we're working through. I know other schools have done it. I don't know that we're quite there yet, but we are having those conversations.
Can I add
Absolutely.
to that? So if a kiddo has, for instance, specially designed instruction in math on their IEP for 60 minutes per day, they're actually getting that because we're providing instruction through the computer on their at-home learning days, actually remote instruction time.
And is that with their teacher or with another teacher?
It's with their special education teacher. Occasionally, there is, in the upper grades, we have the instruction is being provided by an ed tech, but it's designed by the special education teacher. The only exceptions are that we also have created remote learning plans for all of the kiddos. So we may be following that plan, but that's a plan that's been designed and agreed upon with each parent. And it's really designed for the kids that have gone fully remote. Because they get like a mini FAPE versus the full FAPE that they would have if they were here in the hybrid program. Again, designed with parent input, so. But yeah, we are actually, because the IEP is a legal document that we have to follow, so yeah, they're getting it.
Yep, okay. One other thing, is the barrier I've heard about, synchronous teaching is that it's hard to control a classroom while you're also broadcasting to the children that are at home. Do we have enough human beings that could float around to classrooms to be in the classroom an hour a day so that teacher can broadcast at a time, a couple times a week, so that they're going forward with their learning subjects so that, whatever they do on Monday, they do, more of something new or, a continuation of it on Tuesday instead of doing the same thing on each day and then the same thing on each day. Just because, are we doing any synchronous learning now? Because I haven't seen any, but maybe that's just me. But yeah, just more of it, and if there's any way we, like if that's what we're funds, we can use funds to get more humans, even if they're, not necessarily licensed to do anything, just to be there in the classroom so that the teacher can broadcast and that type of thing. I mean, I would be very supportive of the use of that to increase the amount of synchronous learning, so they're getting material.
And I think that's one of the options we need to look, now one of the benefits of being able to stay with the structure we currently have is to be able to take our energy and to focus on that.
We're stuck with this, we better do it.
And we're finally, it feels so good to say that we're in a place where we can reflect on it now and just say, you know what, I couldn't even fathom the idea of doing that, but now I feel like I understand this well enough that I can think about how to manage that and how to look at breakout rooms for kids and just, we were trying to fly the plane while we were building it, and the instructions were being hollered at us in a hurry, you know, like we really, but we've done it long enough now that we know what we don't know, and we're able to have the space to be able to brainstorm that, because it does need to be better supported. You're 100% correct. And so we can take our energy and do that.
I mean, that is one of the things about hybrid learning. It's a lot harder.
Yes.
It's twice as much work. It's the hardest thing the teachers that school can choose to do, is to make it so that we have to do everything twice. It's the hardest thing we could do. Okay, so we chose the hardest option. We didn't go with the easiest things, right? Right, yeah. We didn't go with the easiest thing. The easiest thing would be have everybody here and have them there. So we chose a hard option. We gotta do it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's, if we're at that point now, then that's awesome. And just letting everybody know, you know, the progress forward that we're doing, you know, whether that's bi-weekly updates to community and parents and things like that, to let them know this is what, yeah, maybe like an expectation document like we did at the beginning of the year. Those really could, you know, could change those types of things.
Yep. Well, and that lends itself to the communication piece, the effective communication at this point, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
Because what is it that parents need to hear, need to know on a regular basis?
Yes, if they know that their kid needs to be, like, we all know my kid needs to be somewhere at 1:30 on Wednesdays, and that's the only day he has to be anywhere other than in school. And so that's what we do. But if I knew he had to be somewhere other days for a lesson on this or a lesson on that, or a lesson from a science teacher from another grade, or however it works out, then I think as long as parents know that, they're gonna try. And if not, you obviously can record it and have it on demand. I mean, there's so many things that, there's so many things. Yeah, okay, that's it. That's all I have, sorry.
No, I appreciate the thoughts.
I just want to add that, you know, we may have picked the hardest route, but at this point, it's the best route.
It's the safest, hands
It's the
down.
safest route.
Absolutely.
All right, we have no appointments, we have no resignations. Any things to be addressed in future meetings?
We're gonna have budget next
Budget.
meeting, so February 9th will be, I hope, Paul alluded to it, we hope we have 3 or 4 cost centers. Hopefully we'll be able to report to you on what the ED 279 tells us and doesn't tell us. And there are factors that are going to impact that, I can already guess on several of them. I think, as conversation earlier alluded to, again, we've got more money coming. It could be 3 or 4 times, as Mary's alluded to, and Paula. So if you have some ideas, you know, I guard it. I want to guard it. We'll use it, but I just want to use it very thoughtfully in some places. And anyways, throw your ideas at us, so we can put it on the table and talk about it next meeting.
That's what we'll look for, ideas.
Yep.
All right, our next meeting is now, we will do earlier, February 9th. I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Thank you, everyone, online, in the room, stay safe. And we will probably